It began with a single block of Manhattan real estate, purchased for a sum that redefined extravagance. Not on the gilded Fifth Avenue, but on Riverside Drive, where the Hudson met the sky. Here, a dream took root in stone and steel, a château of 75 rooms, rising with French elegance amidst the grit of New York. Pink granite, hand-carved mahogany, stained glass filtering river light, a private pipe organ filling a two-story chapel with music. It was a palace meant to endure, a monument to a man's boundless ambition. But what happens when even the grandest of visions confronts the unyielding forces of fortune and fate? What unseen cracks can form in a foundation built on absolute power? For the man who orchestrated this architectural marvel, a life defined by audacious risks and unparalleled success, was about to discover that some empires, however magnificent, are as fragile as the glass in their own stained glass windows. Before we delve into this incredible story, tell us in the comments below, where in the world are you watching this from today? Now let's step back in time to the humble beginnings of a titan. The promise of steel, its raw power forged into empires, often begins not in grand foundries, but in the quiet, unassuming corners of a developing nation. For Charles Michael Schwab, his narrative commenced far from the industrial behemoths he would one day command. Born on February 18, 1862, in the small community of Williamsburg, Pennsylvania, Schwab entered a world defined by rural simplicity. His father, John Anthony Schwab, operated a modest stable in Loretto, a tiny town nestled within the Appalachian ridges of central Pennsylvania, and supplemented his income as a mail carrier. John Anthony found contentment in his simple existence, a stark contrast to the restless ambition simmering within his young son. Pauline Farabor, Charles's mother, was the granddaughter of German Catholic immigrants, instilling a heritage of hard work. The air of Loretto was thick with the scent of pine and horse sweat, a place where dreams rarely extended beyond the immediate horizon. Yet, Charles was fundamentally different. While his father embraced the predictable rhythm of his days, young Charlie looked beyond the familiar Appalachian ridges. His gaze, even in youth, seemed to pierce the verdant peaks, envisioning a future not yet materialized. A landscape of towering structures and endless industry, all constructed from the formidable strength of steel and an unyielding will. This nascent ambition, a hunger for something greater than the inherited path, pulsed beneath the surface. He was not content with the smallness of Loretto. His spirit yearned for a larger scale, absorbing what he could but always pushing past the immediate. In 1879, at the mere age of 17, and without the formal completion of a high school education, a detail later overshadowed by his monumental achievements, Charles made the definitive break from Loretto. He embarked on a journey of approximately 70 miles west to Braddock, Pennsylvania, a burgeoning industrial town near Pittsburgh. There he secured his initial foothold, finding employment as a clerk in a local grocery store, earning a modest $10 a month. Behind the counter, amidst the mundane tasks of weighing provisions and selling cigarettes, Schwab encountered a regular customer whose patronage would irrevocably alter the course of his young life. This man was known throughout Braddock as Captain Bill Jones, a formidable figure who commanded immense respect as the superintendent of the Edgar Thomson Steel Works, a cornerstone of Andrew Carnegie's rapidly expanding steel empire. Jones, a man whose presence filled any room, recognized an uncommon spark in the slender, observant young man. It was a hunger that transcended mere subsistence, a drive that hinted at untapped potential, a quickness of mind and an attentiveness that separated Schwab from others. Their interactions, though brief, were always keen. Schwab did not merely serve Jones, he listened, asked intelligent questions, and showed a genuine, unfeigned interest in the mechanics of industry. In 1880, acting on his astute perception, Captain Bill Jones extended an offer to Charles Schwab, a position at the steel mills, with a salary of $25 a month. For Schwab, this was not merely a raise, it was an invitation into the world he had only dreamed of from Loretto. He accepted without hesitation, his decision immediate and resolute. His initial assignment was far from glamorous, hauling survey rods for the engineering department's teams. It was arduous manual labor, demanding physical endurance a grueling, unheroic entry into a world he was destined to reshape. The work was dirty, hot, and often dangerous, immersing him in the raw, elemental reality of steel production. Yet Schwab approached this lowly task with an almost scientific diligence, not merely performing it, but observing every facet of the operation, learning the ground-level mechanics, and understanding the men who performed them. He saw it not as a dead end, but as a critical first step to learn the industry from its foundations. What followed was an ascent that defied the conventional trajectory of the era, an improbable rise powered by a singular combination of attributes. Charles Schwab possessed not only a keen, almost intuitive intellect for industrial processes, but also a magnetic charisma that drew people to him. He understood men with an empathy and psychological insight that often eluded his more technically focused superiors. He instinctively knew when to commend a worker's effort, when to demand higher standards, when to offer encouragement, and when to implement systems of financial incentives that ingeniously transformed mere production into spirited, friendly competition. He made work a game. Anecdotes from the period illustrate his innovative leadership. On one occasion, finding a night shift that had produced 6 charges of steel, Schwab reportedly walked to the mill floor and scrawled a large 6 on the ground with chalk, a silent challenge. The following morning, the day shift, observing the mark, erased it and replaced it with a 7. The night shift, fueled by a competitive spirit Schwab had ignited, responded with a defiant 10. This was the essence of Charles Schwab's leadership, transforming arduous labor into a competitive game, and raw production figures into a source of collective pride. His rapid ascent through the ranks was a direct consequence of this unique blend of skills. By the age of 19, just 2 years after beginning manual labor, Schwab had been promoted to assistant plant manager. This was an almost unheard-of trajectory, driven by his demonstrable grasp of operations and his uncanny ability to motivate workforces. When Captain Bill Jones, his mentor, tragically died in an industrial accident around 1887, a leadership vacuum was created. Charles, then a remarkably young 25, was appointed to fill his formidable role as superintendent. It was a testament to his proven capabilities that Carnegie trusted such immense responsibility to a man barely out of his youth. In 1890, his rapid advancement continued unabated when he became the general superintendent of the entire Edgar Thomson Steel Works, overseeing a vast and complex operation with thousands of employees. Andrew Carnegie, the shrewd Scottish industrialist who had meticulously built his vast steel empire, observed the young Schwab with escalating interest and admiration. Carnegie recognized in Schwab a rare combination of practical genius, peerless leadership, and an almost brutal efficiency that mirrored his own. Schwab was a force multiplier, transforming potential into profit. This value became starkly evident in 1892, when the violent Homestead strike erupted at Carnegie's plant, staining newspaper headlines with blood. The conflict was brutal, divisive, and threatened to cripple Carnegie's empire. It was Charles Schwab, whom Carnegie, then vacationing in Scotland, urgently summoned to America. His task was not merely to restore operations, but to heal the deep wounds within the workforce, quell the violent unrest, and re-establish efficiency amidst the chaos. Schwab succeeded, not only quelling the unrest through a combination of firm management and strategic concessions, but also significantly boosting the plant's output once operations resumed. His ability to navigate such a profound crisis and deliver results under extreme pressure cemented his indispensable value to Carnegie. He was a crisis manager, negotiator, and motivator. By 1897, at the remarkable age of 35, Charles M. Schwab achieved what had been an unfathomable ambition for the son of a Loretto stable owner. He was appointed president of the mighty Carnegie Steel Company. His annual salary alone surpassed $1 million, an astronomical fortune in an era where the average annual income was a mere fraction of that. It was a sum virtually unimaginable for a man who had begun his career hauling survey rods for $25 a month, a mere 2 decades prior. The former lad, as his future wife would affectionately call him, had transformed steel into an empire, and his own name into a testament to an inevitable, unstoppable ascent, proving that raw ambition, coupled with an unparalleled understanding of industry and human nature, could shatter the most rigid class barriers of the Gilded Age. The path from Loretto's quiet stables to the helm of America's greatest steel company was complete, a monument to a will forged as strong as the metal he now commanded. Charles Michael Schwab's ascent to the presidency of Carnegie Steel Company at 35, commanding an annual salary exceeding $1 million, was a testament to his unparalleled drive and strategic acumen. Yet, even as his professional life soared, Charles had, years prior, laid the foundations for his personal world, intertwining his destiny with Emma Urana Dinky. Their marriage on May 1, 1883, marked a significant milestone, preceding his most meteoric rise by over a decade. Urana, known affectionately as Rana, was 2 years Charles's senior, having been born on September 12, 1859. Their initial encounter was not in the grand ballrooms of Pittsburgh society, but in the practical, bustling environment of Braddock. Rana's mother, Mary Horn Dinky, a resourceful woman, had opened a boarding house after being widowed, and it was there, amidst the comings and goings of steelworkers and townsfolk, that Rana met the ambitious young Schwab. Rana, a woman of quiet demeanor and intellectual pursuits, was the daughter of Reuben Dinky, one of the nation's pioneering steel chemists. Her heritage was steeped in the very industry Charles sought to conquer, though her own inclinations leaned towards introspection. When Charles proposed marriage, Rana, with a characteristic dry wit, reportedly teased him, asking, "Why do you want to marry an old lady like me, lad?" From that day forward, the affectionate monikers "old lady" and "lad" became their private terms of endearment, a small intimacy in a life that would eventually become very public. This domestic detail underscored a deeper dynamic. Rana provided a grounding force for Charles, supporting his early experiments in a private laboratory he maintained, though her personal preferences drew her to the quiet solitude of books, intricate embroidery, and complex puzzles. This contrasted sharply with Charles's burgeoning social ascension and the frenetic pace of industrial expansion. Notably, Charles's mother, Pauline Faribault Schwab, held reservations about the union, primarily due to Rana not being Catholic, a detail reflective of the era's social and religious customs in their small Pennsylvania community. Despite their deep bond, Charles and Urana never had children of their own. This absence, however, concealed a private facet of Charles's life. He had an illegitimate daughter from an extramarital relationship, a fact he maintained in strict secrecy throughout his life, yet ensuring her financial security. This hidden detail offered a glimpse into the complexities of his character, a man capable of both immense public ambition and discreet private responsibilities. By December 1900, Charles Schwab, then at the zenith of his power as president of Carnegie Steel, stood before an assembly of titans. At a dinner hosted at the exclusive University Club in New York, 80 of the nation's leading financiers had gathered, among them the formidable J. Pierpont Morgan, whose influence on American industry was unparalleled. Schwab, rather than delivering a typical after-dinner pleasantry, captivated the room with a visionary speech. He articulated, with characteristic clarity and persuasive power, the inherent inefficiencies of the fragmented steel production landscape. He passionately advocated for large-scale consolidation, arguing that only through a unified, colossal enterprise could the American steel industry truly dominate global markets and achieve unprecedented economies of scale. His words painted a vivid picture of a future defined by efficiency and limitless growth. J.P. Morgan, a man known for his astute financial calculations and ruthless business strategies, listened with a growing mix of alarm and fascination. Carnegie's aggressive expansion plans, championed by Schwab, directly threatened Morgan's own Federal Steel Company. The speech, however, transformed Morgan's apprehension into an opportunity. He saw in Schwab not merely a rival's capable lieutenant, but a potential architect for his own grand design. Subsequently, Morgan initiated negotiations to acquire Carnegie Steel. Charles Schwab became the pivotal intermediary, navigating the complex and often contentious discussions between his mentor, Andrew Carnegie, and the powerful financier. It was Schwab's unique relationship with Carnegie, coupled with his unparalleled understanding of the steel business and his persuasive abilities, that ultimately convinced the notoriously reluctant and fiercely independent Carnegie to sell his empire. In 1901, the monumental deal was struck, giving birth to the United States Steel Corporation. It was an enterprise of unprecedented scale, the world's first billion-dollar company, and a testament to the transformative power of consolidation. Charles Schwab, at the age of 39, was appointed its first president, a role that placed him at the helm of an industrial colossus. From a humble stable owner's son to the leader of the world's largest corporation, his trajectory was nothing short of miraculous. However, Schwab's indomitable spirit, the very quality that propelled him to such heights, proved incompatible with the more conservative, financially driven corporate culture that soon emerged under Morgan's oversight. Schwab was an entrepreneur at heart, a risk-taker, and an innovator who chafed under bureaucratic constraints and the cautious directives of the new corporate board. Confrontations with Morgan and other U.S. steel executives became increasingly frequent, driven by fundamental differences in vision and management philosophy. Schwab yearned for aggressive expansion and technological innovation. Morgan sought stability and financial control. The clash of these titanic wills was inevitable. In 1903, unable to reconcile his entrepreneurial drive with the corporate strictures of U.S. Steel, Charles Schwab abruptly left the company he had helped create. His departure sent shockwaves through the financial world, but Schwab was not a man to rest on past laurels. He immediately embarked on his next audacious venture, assuming control of the struggling Bethlehem Shipbuilding and Steel Company in Pennsylvania. A year later, in 1904, he orchestrated the merger of Bethlehem with the bankrupt United States Shipbuilding Company, giving rise to the Bethlehem Steel Corporation. This was a company in dire straits, yet Schwab saw immense potential where others saw only ruin. Under Schwab's visionary leadership, and with the crucial engineering expertise of Eugene Grace, Bethlehem Steel underwent a radical transformation. They pioneered the development and mass production of the wide-flange H-beam, a revolutionary structural component that would become the precursor to the ubiquitous I-beam. This innovation was a game-changer, dramatically reducing construction costs and fundamentally altering the landscape of urban development, making the age of towering skyscrapers economically feasible. In 1908, as Bethlehem Steel began manufacturing these groundbreaking beams, Charles Schwab, ever the audacious risk-taker, articulated his philosophy to his secretary with a now famous declaration, "I've thought of everything, and if we go broke, we'll go broke in a big way." It was a statement that epitomized his willingness to gamble on innovation, to commit fully to his vision, regardless of the potential for spectacular failure. They did not go broke. Instead, under Schwab's relentless guidance, Bethlehem Steel flourished, rapidly expanding its operations and market share. It grew to become the second-largest steel producer in the world, a testament to Schwab's ability to resurrect failing enterprises and imbue them with new life and purpose. His ambition knew no bounds, and his successes seemed to stack one upon another, each more impressive than the last, culminating in a fortune that would soon allow him to indulge his most extravagant personal dreams. Fueled by a colossal fortune amassed through his audacious ventures, and imbued with a sense of invincibility that only the truly powerful come to know, Charles Schwab now turned his formidable ambition toward a new objective: the construction of a palatial residence in Manhattan, one that would not merely rival, but unequivocally surpass, all existing expectations of urban grandeur. His triumphs at Bethlehem Steel, transforming a struggling enterprise into the world's second-largest steel producer, had solidified his place among America's industrial titans, and he sought a dwelling commensurate with his towering achievements. In 1901, with an eye for both strategic advantage and breathtaking aesthetics, Charles Schwab executed a purchase that sent ripples through New York's elite real estate circles. He acquired an entire city block on Riverside Drive, spanning from 73rd to 74th Streets and extending inland to West End Avenue. This transaction, totaling an unprecedented $865,000, was a record for its time. The chosen site was not the hallowed traditional Fifth Avenue, where titans like Andrew Carnegie and Henry Clay Frick had erected their palatial homes. Schwab's selection of the Upper West Side, often considered the wrong side of Central Park by the established old guard, was a deliberate visionary act. It offered unobstructed, panoramic views of the majestic Hudson River and the dramatic Palisades, and Schwab, with characteristic foresight, firmly believed that Riverside Drive would eventually eclipse Fifth Avenue as the preferred enclave for New York's burgeoning wealthy, offering respite from the burgeoning commercial bustle of what is now Midtown. The land he acquired had previously housed the New York-colored orphan asylum, which was subsequently demolished to make way for Schwab's magnificent new dream. To bring his vision to life, Charles Schwab sought out Maurice Hébert, a French architect who self-styled himself as a specialist in the reproduction of historic exteriors and classical interiors. Schwab's travels through Europe with his wife, Urana, had deeply impressed upon them the architectural splendor of French châteaux. Hébert was commissioned to create a residence that would artfully blend elements inspired by three particular castles: Chenonceau, with its distinctive bridge-like gallery; Azay-le-Rideau, with its refined Renaissance elegance; and the Royal Château de Blois, known for its diverse architectural styles. The intent was not mere replication, but a masterful synthesis, producing an authentic French château transposed onto the dramatic backdrop of Manhattan, before a single shovel broke ground. The design process itself was a testament to Schwab's meticulousness and willingness to invest. In 1902, a detailed model of the proposed château was crafted in wax, a painstaking endeavor that alone cost $20,000. This preliminary step allowed Schwab and his team to visualize every intricate detail and make adjustments before the immense undertaking of construction began. The initial budget for this ambitious project was estimated at $2.5 million, with a projected completion date set optimistically for Christmas of 1904. These figures, however, would prove to be only a fraction of the final cost, a common trajectory for projects of such boundless ambition. The construction of what would be named Riverside House commenced in earnest and spanned an arduous 4 years. This period saw a small army of dedicated professionals, more than 100 artists, designers, modelers, engineers, and architects, working tirelessly to bring the complex vision to fruition. The very materials chosen spoke of unparalleled luxury and bespoke craftsmanship. The radiant pink granite for its foundational elements and decorative details was sourced from a private quarry in Peekskill, New York. The sprawling facade was a sophisticated interplay of cream-colored granite and rich brickwork, culminating in a distinctive campanile crowned with carillons and soaring pinnacles that reached a dizzying height of 115 feet, sharply silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline and the wide expanse of the Hudson. Within its colossal walls, the interior of Riverside House was an even more breathtaking display of opulence. Elaborately sculpted marble columns soared from polished floors to hand-painted ceilings, each fresco a unique work of art. Rich South American mahogany paneling adorned the walls of numerous rooms, complemented by hand-carved mahogany doors that were themselves individual masterpieces. Light filtered into the grand spaces through exquisite stained glass windows, casting the river's ever-changing hues across the interiors in shimmering tones of sapphire and ruby. At the heart of the mansion's artistic and spiritual design was a magnificent two-story chapel. Designed not just for worship, but also as a dedicated space for orchestral performances, it housed a colossal pipe organ, custom-built to fill the vast space with resonant music. Charles Schwab, whose appreciation for music was as refined as his taste for industry, retained a private organist, S. Archer Gibson, for the exclusive privilege of playing this instrument. Gibson received a princely annual salary of $10,000. Schwab's commitment to this musical indulgence was such that, at Gibson's request, the organ was substantially enlarged in 1904 at an additional cost of $21,500. 7 years later, in 1911, it underwent another expansion, costing a further $23,457.50, underscoring the proprietor's relentless pursuit of perfection in every detail. When Riverside House was finally completed in 1906, it stood as an architectural marvel, a testament to unbridled wealth and ambition. Its final cost, depending on the source, ranged between $6 and $7 million, a sum that dwarfed its initial estimate and placed it among the most expensive private residences ever built. The sheer scale was staggering. 50,000 square feet divided into 75 opulent rooms. The mansion boasted 3 elevators to navigate its multiple floors, a Roman-style indoor swimming pool, a private bowling alley, and a well-equipped gymnasium. A dedicated garage provided ample space for Schwab's 4 automobiles, then a symbol of ultimate modernity. Elaborate terraced gardens cascaded down towards the street, concealing a buried service tunnel beneath. The logistical demands of maintaining such a behemoth were immense. The house possessed its own private power plant, a necessity to illuminate its 6,000 incandescent light bulbs, transforming night into day. Its appetite for coal was prodigious. Half a ton was consumed whenever the laundry dryers were activated, frequently a ton per day when the Schwabs were in residence, culminating in over 100 tons annually. Even on relatively mild autumn or winter days, the vast structure struggled to retain warmth, often remaining chilly. During the brutal New York winters, the furnaces burned through an astonishing 5 tons of coal daily to keep its sprawling rooms habitable. The grandeur extended to every entrance. The massive bronze doors at the main entrance facing the river weighed an astonishing 1.5 tons each. Another set of equally imposing bronze doors marked the northern side, providing access from 74th Street. This architectural spectacle drew considerable attention, not least from Andrew Carnegie himself. The Scottish steel magnate, whose own palatial mansion on 5th Avenue at 91st Street would later become the Cooper Hewitt Museum, visited Riverside House. Surveying Schwab's extravagant creation, Carnegie, with a mixture of genuine admiration and perhaps a touch of proprietary envy, delivered a now famous and telling comment: "You saw that place of Charlie's. Makes mine look like a shack." The media, too, reacted with a blend of awe and cautious prognostication. The New York Times, typically reserved, extolled the mansion in its pages, declaring, in architectural design, richness of decoration and completeness of detail, this structure is calculated to surpass in luxury and magnificence any urban residence in America, if not the entire world. Harper's Weekly, however, offered a more circumspect, almost prophetic assessment. While acknowledging its splendor, the publication admitted that the mansion may seem to the average observer an onerous possession, oppressive to keep up and probably embarrassing to heirs, but if Mr. Schwab can stand it, we can. These words, delivered at the height of Schwab's power, carried a subtle undercurrent of warning, hinting at the immense burden that such a magnificent edifice could one day become. For now, however, Riverside House stood as the ultimate physical manifestation of Charles Schwab's unstoppable will and boundless ambition. In 1906, the monumental Riverside House, a testament to unbridled ambition and architectural grandeur, finally opened its colossal bronze doors to its proprietors. Charles Michael Schwab, then 44 years old and at the apex of his industrial power, moved into his Manhattan château with his wife, Emma Urana Dinky Schwab, along with their 2 dogs and a beloved parrot. Their residence marked the beginning of an era of unprecedented private luxury, transforming an entire city block into a private domain of opulence. The logistical demands of maintaining such a residence were immense, necessitating a dedicated staff of 35 individuals. This meticulously chosen team, predominantly comprised of experienced English domestics, operated with precision under the stern yet efficient leadership of George Stone, the mansion's head butler. Their duties encompassed everything from managing the 6,000 incandescent light bulbs powered by the house's private plant, to fueling the voracious furnaces that consumed tons of coal daily to temper the chill of 75 expansive rooms. The internal rhythms of Riverside House were those of a finely tuned machine, ensuring that every desire of its inhabitants was anticipated and met. For Charles, Riverside House became the ultimate stage for his burgeoning social and financial celebrity. For Urania, however, it increasingly became a gilded cage. While she had initially expressed reservations about moving so far uptown, fearing isolation from her Fifth Avenue friends, the reality proved more profound. Although her friends did visit regularly in the early years, Rana gradually began to withdraw from the vibrant social scene that her husband's immense wealth afforded them. Her reclusion stemmed largely from a growing embarrassment regarding her physical condition. She had become severely overweight. This self-consciousness led her to refuse social invitations, even those from the highest echelons of society, including the White House. She preferred the quiet solitude of Riverside House, attended by her 20 personal servants, finding comfort in her books, embroidery, and puzzles, a stark contrast to the frenetic social whirl Charles embraced. The magnificent château, intended as a shared monument to their success, inadvertently became a symbol of their diverging lives, physically bringing them under one roof while psychologically creating a widening chasm. Charles, meanwhile, continued to live a life of unbridled extravagance and public display, his reputation for impetuous spending becoming as legendary as his acumen in steel production. He was a man who embraced life with a theatrical flourish, hosting opulent parties within the cavernous halls of Riverside House, where financiers, politicians, and socialites mingled beneath hand-painted ceilings. His passion for high-stakes gambling was well known, culminating in a famous incident in 1913 when he broke the bank at Monte Carlo, a feat that cemented his international celebrity status. To facilitate his travels, he commissioned a $100,000 private railway car, which he affectionately named Loretto, a poignant nod to his humble beginnings even as he soared to unimaginable heights. His notoriety extended even to popular culture. In 1918, he appeared in a film titled The Yellow Dog, further cementing his image as a larger-than-life figure. This public persona, however, also masked a private life marked by a series of extramarital affairs, further underscoring the growing distance between him and his increasingly reclusive wife. The early 20th century presented a period of immense global upheaval, and Charles Schwab, ever the opportunist, leveraged these challenges to further consolidate his industrial empire. With the outbreak of the First World War in Europe, Bethlehem Steel, under his astute leadership, found itself in a virtually monopolistic position for supplying certain types of munitions to the Allied powers. Charles made numerous trips to Europe, deftly navigating complex international laws and circumventing American neutrality restrictions by channeling goods through Canada. This strategic maneuvering not only secured immense profits for Bethlehem Steel, but also underscored Schwab's pivotal role on the world stage. Recognizing his unparalleled organizational skills and industrial prowess, President Woodrow Wilson personally called upon Charles Schwab in 1918 to head the Emergency Fleet Corporation. This critical wartime agency was tasked with the Herculean effort of rapidly producing merchant ships, vital for transporting American troops and essential materials across the Atlantic to support the war effort. Schwab brought his characteristic dynamism and incentive-driven management philosophy to this national undertaking, significantly accelerating shipbuilding production at a crucial time. Despite his relentless pursuit of wealth and an extravagant lifestyle, Charles Schwab was also a significant philanthropist, maintaining a connection to his roots and his wife's family. In 1901, years before the completion of Riverside House, he made a promise to the town of Weatherly, Pennsylvania, Urania's hometown, to fund a new school, the resulting three-story domed structure known as the C. Monsieur Schwab School was completed in July 1903 at a cost of $75,000. Later in 1914, he purchased 23.5 acres of land in Weatherly, which he transformed into the beautiful Urania Park, a public green space dedicated to his wife. That same year, when the church where Rana's family had worshipped faced costly repairs, Charles and Urania jointly financed the construction of an entirely new edifice. This new church, dedicated on September 12, 1915, Urania's birthday, was subsequently renamed the Dinky Memorial, honoring her father and uncle, Reuben and Charles Dinky. These acts of generosity illustrated a desire to give back to the communities that had shaped his and his wife's early lives. creating lasting legacies of a different kind than those built of steel. In 1919, Schwab embarked on another monumental personal project, the construction of a lavish summer estate in Loretto, Pennsylvania, his own birthplace. He named it Immergrün, German for evergreen, a 44-room mansion situated on a sprawling 1,000 acres. This estate was a marvel of landscape architecture, featuring opulent gardens and a private 9-hole golf course. The construction cost alone amounted to $3 million. In a testament to his characteristic disregard for conventional methods, rather than demolishing the existing smaller house on the property, Schwab famously had it moved 60 yards on rollers to make space for his new palatial residence. Immergrün was designed as a sanctuary, a verdant counterpoint to the urban splendor of Riverside House, symbolizing another facet of his boundless ambition and commitment to his origins. However, even at this zenith of his prosperity, with his fortune estimated to be between $25 and $40 million, a staggering sum that would equate to between $500 and $800 million in the early 21st century when adjusted for inflation, the first, almost imperceptible signs of erosion were already manifesting. Schwab's lifestyle, characterized by an unrestrained appetite for luxury, lavish entertainment, and significant gambling losses, was fundamentally unsustainable. The sheer operational cost of maintaining Riverside House, coupled with the construction and upkeep of Immergrün and his personal expenditures, represented a continuous drain on even his vast reserves. While his income was immense, his outgoings were equally prodigious. The cautionary words of Harper's Weekly about the mansion being oppressive to keep up were proving prescient, albeit subtly. The grandiosity that defined Charles Schwab's empire was, in its very essence, laying the groundwork for its eventual dramatic unraveling, a slow, inevitable current beginning to pull at the foundations of his seemingly invincible financial might. The early signs of erosion, subtle currents pulling at the seemingly invincible financial might of Charles Schwab, gathered into an unstoppable deluge with the advent of the Great Depression. The Wall Street crash of 1929, an economic cataclysm of unprecedented scale, did not merely shake the foundations of American prosperity. It began the inexorable dismantling of Schwab's vast personal fortune, and with it, the very essence of his grandest creation, Riverside House. The magnificent château, once the ultimate symbol of his triumph, rapidly transformed into what contemporary observers universally dubbed a white elephant, an impossibly grand yet utterly impractical burden. Its colossal scale, once its greatest asset, became its most significant liability in an era of national destitution. By 1933, the weight of the economic downturn had become unbearable. Charles Schwab, despite his immense past wealth, found himself unable to meet the staggering property taxes levied against Riverside House. The annual upkeep, which had always been astronomical, was now a financial impossibility. The 75 rooms, once bustling with staff and vibrant with opulent gatherings, began to echo with a growing silence, a stark testament to the altered times. The lavish lifestyle, once sustained by an endless stream of income, had drained his reserves, leaving him vulnerable to the economic seismic shift. The situation grew increasingly desperate. In 1936, Schwab made a determined, yet ultimately futile, attempt to divest himself of the property. He placed Riverside House on the market, offering it for sale at a price of $4 million. This figure, while substantial, represented barely more than half, and by some accounts, less than 1/3 of its original construction cost. Yet in the grips of the Great Depression, there were no buyers. The nation was mired in economic despair. No individual or entity possessed the capital, or indeed the desire, for a 75-room French château on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. The market for such extraordinary luxury had simply evaporated. In a final, desperate plea, Charles Schwab offered Riverside House to the city of New York, hoping it might serve a public purpose, perhaps as the official residence for the mayor. However, Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, a pragmatic and popular leader keenly aware of the public mood, flatly rejected the offer. His response was swift and definitive, encapsulating the public's sentiment towards such ostentatious displays of wealth, during a period of widespread suffering. LaGuardia famously retorted with a dismissive wave, "Me, in that thing?" His categorical refusal sealed the fate of Riverside House, effectively pronouncing its death sentence. It was a rejection not just of a building, but of an entire era of excess. The personal toll of these financial reversals was immense, compounding the strain on Charles and Urana Schwab. On January 12, 1939, Emma Urana Dinky Schwab died from heart problems at the age of 79. Her passing occurred not within the grand walls of Riverside House, but in a more modest Park Avenue apartment. The residence they had moved to after the mansion became untenable. Rana, Charles's partner for 54 years, the woman who had affectionately called him lad and had stood by him through the struggles and successes, was gone. Her reclusive final years, marked by health struggles and an aversion to public life, ended far from the palatial splendor that had once defined their existence. Weeks after Urana's death, Charles, now 77, left the Park Avenue apartment, finding temporary solace in a hotel. On September 18, 1939, Charles Michael Schwab himself died of a heart attack. The man who had amassed a colossal fortune, who had built the world's largest steel company and then its second largest, died bankrupt, more than $300,000 in debt. His once valuable holdings in Bethlehem Steel had been rendered nearly worthless by the economic collapse. It was a cruel irony of timing. Had he lived just a few more years, Schwab would have witnessed the spectacular restoration of his fortune as Bethlehem Steel became deluged with orders for war materials to support the Allied efforts in the impending Second World War. But death, as it often does, waited for no economic recovery. Charles and Urana Schwab were laid to rest together in a private mausoleum within St. Michael's Cemetery in Loretto, Pennsylvania, the very town where Charles's extraordinary journey had begun 80 years prior. It was a return to his humble origins, a final resting place far from the glittering, transient world he had conquered. In the wake of Schwab's death, Riverside House stood vacant, a ghostly, cavernous shell of materialized ambition. Its elaborate gardens, once meticulously manicured, slowly yielded to neglect. The grand entrance gates, capable of admitting carriages and fleets of luxury automobiles, now stood largely idle. During the Second World War, as New York City adapted to wartime exigencies, the colossal mansion was subdivided into multiple apartments, an attempt to salvage some utility from its immense, unmanageable scale. Victory gardens, symbols of national resilience and frugality, sprouted in its once elaborate terraced grounds. The neighborhood, which Schwab had envisioned as the future preserve of the city's wealthy, gradually deteriorated as surrounding buildings became overcrowded, a consequence of urban migration and economic shifts. By 1947, the house remained largely empty, its subdivided units failing to attract tenants. The sheer cost of maintenance, even for a divided structure, was prohibitive, and its outdated amenities, despite their former opulence, were no longer practical. The Prudential Insurance Company eventually purchased the property for a modest $1.5 million, a fraction of its original expense. In a poignant final chapter for the mansion, the interior fittings were put up for sale. Among the scores of spectators who gathered to witness this dismantling of a dream was an elderly S. Archer Gibson, Charles Schwab's former private organist. He was not there to purchase bronze hardware or fragments of stained glass. He was there to remember, to walk through the now empty, desolate spaces that once reverberated with the music he had created. In the area that had been the two-story chapel, Gibson stood beside the magnificent pipe organ's cabinet, the instrument he had played for Charles Schwab. He understood, with a profound sense of finality, that the days when the fabulously rich installed colossal pipe organs in their private homes and employed full-time organists were irrevocably over. And with that realization, the extraordinary days of Schwab's mansion were also at their end. In 1948, less than 50 years after its completion, Riverside House was demolished. A 2-ton wrecking ball systematically reduced the French château, with its intricately carved marble columns, its majestic hand-carved staircase, its frescoed ceilings, its magnificent pipe organ, and its 1.5-ton bronze doors, to dust and rubble. Some elements were salvaged, The impressive mahogany doors and several marble pilasters were carefully removed and subsequently installed in the Cathedral of Our Lady of Lebanon in Brooklyn, a small, enduring fragment of Schwab's lavish vision. The rest vanished, consumed by the relentless march of urban progress. In the place of what had been the largest private residence ever constructed in Manhattan, a 19-story red brick apartment complex rose from the ashes. It was aptly named Schwab House, a pragmatic, anonymous structure bearing no trace of the splendor that had once occupied that entire city block between 73rd and 74th Streets, from Riverside Drive to West End Avenue. Today, if one walks along Riverside Drive and pauses at number 11, tourists and New Yorkers alike pass by without knowing the history beneath their feet. One would see nothing of the château that Andrew Carnegie once said made his own palace look like a shack. There would be no echo of the pipe organ resonating through the two-story chapel, no sense of the immense weight of the bronze doors beneath one's hand. The 6,000 incandescent bulbs that once turned night into day are gone, as are the terraced gardens cascading to the street, and the 115-foot pinnacles that once cut a dramatic silhouette against the Hudson sky. All that remains is a story. The story of a boy from Loretto who carried survey rods, who learned that steel could be forged into empire, who built the grandest private palace in Manhattan, and who died nearly penniless. It is a lesson about the fragility of grandeur, a stark reminder that while Charles M. Schwab proved it was possible to transform steel into gold, he discovered too late that gold too can melt, and that even the most magnificent dreams, when built in stone, can sometimes last less than a man's lifetime. Stone outlasts flesh, we often say, but sometimes not even stone survives the relentless passage of time and the ceaseless, indifferent change of a city that never sleeps, never stops, never looks back for very long. Manhattan has always built upon its own ruins, layer upon layer since its earliest days as New Amsterdam. Charles Schwab's Riverside House is merely another stratum of history, buried beneath the present, a palace of ghosts that existed briefly in the space between ambition and ruin, between a dream and its ultimate, irreversible awakening. The grand vision of Charles Schwab, etched in the 75 rooms of Riverside House, ultimately yielded to the indifferent forces of time and economic upheaval. A fortune once thought boundless dissolved amidst the relentless grip of the Great Depression, leaving its architect in debt and his magnificent palace an unmanageable burden. The deaths of Charles and Emma Urana Schwab, occurring within a year of each other, marked the final chapter of their personal saga, a testament to both shared triumphs and diverging paths. Soon after, the very stone that embodied Schwab's ambition was reduced to rubble, a poignant echo of his meteoric rise and equally dramatic fall. In its place, the practical anonymity of Schwab House now stands, an everyday testament to a dream too grand for even Manhattan's enduring embrace, a city that forgets as quickly as it rebuilds. The aged S. Archer Gibson, standing amidst the fragments of his past, bore witness to the final, quiet dismantling of an era. His story serves as a stark, stone-carved allegory, a reminder that even the most formidable empires, built on unyielding steel and boundless will, can succumb to the relentless currents of history. It is a narrative woven with threads of aspiration and hubris, illustrating how swiftly the pinnacle of power can become a precipice, and how the dreams cast in the hardest materials can prove as fleeting as a whisper on the Hudson wind. New York, in its ceaseless reinvention, often buries its past under new layers of progress, transforming monuments into footnotes and legendary figures into the namesakes of functional anonymous structures. What do you believe truly defines a lasting legacy? Was Charles Schwab's ambition a triumph, a tragedy, or merely an inevitable arc of the Gilded Age? Share your thoughts on his incredible life and the ultimate fate of Riverside House in the comments below. If the echoes of forgotten fortunes and the tales of fallen empires intrigue you, be sure to explore more stories from the annals of wealth and power right here on Old Money Chronicles. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Old Money Chronicles for more deep dives into the lives that shaped our world.